This video is to go over the basics of the annotated bibliography entry. So you will have multiple entries, and for this video I want to go over the key parts of those. So the first part, the most obvious part here, is the actual entry, which you see here. This is the basic format. I will say this is actually the older version of MLA style, so you don't want to pay attention to the specifics on this, but it is the basic idea. You have a hanging indent, you have the author's last name, first name, article in quotation marks, the container in italics, the container being the name of the journal or the publication. You have the volume and issue number. For the new MLA styles is slightly different, as well as the date of publication, but you have the same basic idea there. I don't know why this is repeated in this student example, but the basic idea is there for the citation. So you can have something like that, and then what I really want to go over in this video is the parts of the entry, or the elements that I'm looking for. This is listed in the description for the assignment, but it's also listed in the rubric for it under annotation elements, and you'll see that on your drafts. So the first part is the summary aspect. So you should basically, in every entry, you should start by giving a brief summary of the article that you're looking at. So in this one, it goes from here to here. Basically, it tells us the basic topic for this. So the data protection regulation, the right to be forgotten. It tells us that it discusses the challenges, etc., related to this. And it gives us kind of a general sense of what the purpose of the article is, which is to discuss the pros and cons of this. Could get a little bit more specific, but you're looking for a general sort of outline. This is what the purpose of this article is. This is the main point of it, and what the author's main claim for this article is, kind of like the main purpose. You could explain a little bit about the basic way it does that, but you don't have to go crazy with details there. That's the summary aspect. Now let's look at the evaluation, because this is something that many people were missing, or at least needed to work on for your entries in the drafts. So the evaluation part starts here, and it goes to basically here in this sample. So you see that the student writes, the academic journal article, telling us that it is an academic journal article, is an excellent source, so it's making an evaluative claim. Why is it excellent? Well, it's in-depth and reliable, and it provides information about this particular topic. It does admit that there might be some issues with it, right? The author may be somewhat biased. He might have a preference for a particular side. You could explain that a little bit. But it explains that it provides information and details supporting both sides, which shows that the author knows and understands it. And it also talks a little bit about the fact that he uses actual events and to support the argument. So the idea that there is some sort of the evidence used is valid there. So this is just basically, for the evaluation part, it's basically a discussion of whether the source is reliable, whether it goes into depth, that type of thing. And you would see the biggest difference would be something like looking at the difference between an academic journal article, which many of your sources will be, and looking at like a newspaper source. And then you can look at the distinctions there, and you'll see that the newspaper source is going to be less in depth. Because of the timeliness of it, they may have less time to check the facts, so it may be less reliable in that sense. So there are things you want to take into account. The goal is that you show that you understand the different types of sources, the strengths and weaknesses of them, and be able to show that you can critically evaluate them. So that's the second part. And then the third part is basically, we're calling it the relevance, but it's basically how this article or this source is going to be helpful to you, or how you plan to use it um, for your essay. And you see this in the student sample. This source is essential, part of my research project, because it gave me an understanding of this. And the argument for and against. This article helped me see the positive and negative effect this regulation would have throughout the world. So kind of a brief overview that's saying, it provided some groundwork for this piece. And this might be, for this source, this might be the case, but other sources, you would have to say, it would have to be something different, because clearly, not every source can provide the groundwork. Some might be providing interesting statistics, it might be providing an interesting angle, and you can even note the type of things that you may be using from that article. So just make sure as you go through it that you do include the summary of it briefly, a brief evaluation of the quality of the source, and discussion of how this is relevant to your topic and your upcoming paper, how you will use it for those purposes. Try to include them in this order so it's easier to read, and make sure to have a distinction between them as you're writing them.